And these were very, very divided times. We had riots in the streets over the war. We had riots, civil riots. President Johnson was constantly sending over more and more troops and misleading America into thinking the war was almost won, and then we went from like 30,000 to 560,000. In the fall of 1968, when all this division was occurring, I read about a woman who lived in Coronado by the name of Sybil Stockdale, who had allowed herself to be interviewed, and it was quite clear that she wasn't supposed to say what she said because she had had the clamp put on her like everybody else. Your husband's been shot down, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. But importantly, we don't want you to tell anybody. It's hard to go public when they're saying it's going to kill your husband. That was, if not said in so many words, it certainly was implied. And by the way, we didn't know what the result was going to be, but it had been so long and the men were in such terrible shape from the intelligence we were able to see that we had no choice. I actually went to Senator McCain's father, who was then a 4-star admiral in charge of all the military, not just the Navy. Mel Laird wanted me to talk to him about it and get his tacit approval at least, so he wouldn't be surprised. And he said, you know, I know what you're dealing with here, and you do what you have to do. I'll never forget that conversation. And we announced that the next morning at our press briefing was going to focus on prisoners of war, and with that about 150 media showed up. We talked about what the situation was, how many men were missing, how long they'd been captured, how the Geneva Conventions were being violated, and demanding the immediate release of these men. That started a long propaganda battle between North Vietnam and the United States. It also triggered all of the anti-war people in Congress saying, oh, this is a trick, that what we're trying to do is to prolong the war. When we went public, Senator Dole was one of the first people that I went to because I thought this is a great opportunity of leadership for a senator. We need the Senate support. Make this a big issue in the Senate, and it will certainly help. And he saw it right away. And some of the senators said this is just a propaganda effort. Senator Fulbright had a hearing on that and blasted us. We were not gaining support for a lot of what we were doing, but Bob Dole hung in there, and that event in Constitution Hall was a big success. The Geneva Conventions, which manages prisoners of war in all wars, and North Vietnam had signed onto it. It states that if you're going to release prisoners, you do them in the order of the longest to the shortest in captivity, and those who are wounded or otherwise in bad health. So this didn't happen that way. These are people who kind of cooperated with the North Vietnamese. 2 of them were injured, but the others were suspect. And so they were picked up in Hanoi by some of the anti-war people. They were trying to claim credit. This is about the time Jane Fonda was over there, and she was manning a machine gun that was used to shoot down American planes. So all this back and forth is going on. Well, we hustled them off in a car, and so that helped us because they were useful in confirming the conditions. And one was a mailman. His name was Hagdahl, Douglas Hagdahl. But he was a mailman on a cruiser, and he was on the deck in a storm, and he was washed overboard. And some North Vietnamese fishermen picked him up, and he was a prisoner. All these hardened pilots, they loved this guy because he was so easy to get along with, but he had an unbelievable memory. And when we met him, he said, sorry, I can't talk to you. Put me in a room, I've got to give you these names. And he had memorized them, and he did them all in order, all 500. And he gave them, and that immediately told families that their husband or their dad or their son was alive. But my job was legislative affairs, was managing 700 senior officers who were covering the Hill to try to get our legislation passed. So that was a huge job, but I never let go of this. And then we brought in some other people, including Chappie James, who was an Air Force general. And so I was able to step back. But then when it started to succeed, you have 1,000 authors. Everybody wants to be on board. You know, Nixon started it, invited Sybil, and there's that famous picture of several of them meeting with the president the first time he met with him. And of course, he had that huge event for the POWs. I mean, it all worked itself out. These were just very, very difficult times.
Many people have died. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing.